All right, I will call the Southborough Capital Planning Committee meeting to order for Monday, December 7th, 2020. It is 7:32 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Capital Planning Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we're unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All right. Hi, Kathy. We're going to move right into approval of meeting minutes from the November 9th and November 23rd meetings. So November 9th, we had pretty extensive dialogue on the last meeting. I think we agreed to hold them to make sure that I think Mr. Hark was capturing the edits, captured them. Did anyone have any comments on the revisions that were sent around? I'm seeing no comments. So I'll move that we accept the edited minutes as presented by Mr. Hark. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Where'd she go? Braccio.
Aye.
I'm gonna skip Cook for a second. Hark.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
Cook.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. That passes unanimously. We'll go to November 23rd. Mr. Pfaff circulated those. Are there any comments or questions on those?
I've got a few. You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Andrew, under the first page, meeting with EDC, Route 9. Third sentence, he stated that Southborough commercial space is at 23%. The vacancy is at 23%.
Vacancy rate is at 23%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, to the next sentence, very first word, instead of looking at, put expected to decline. It hasn't expected yet. I mean, it hadn't happened yet, but it probably, I agree, it's probably going to, but expected is I think a better word.
Okay.
Okay, next page, first paragraph. The warrant for the spring town meeting, not down meeting.
Sorry, so
First paragraph, second page, last sentence. So it's the third sentence.
Yeah, okay.
That one. The next sentence down, stabilization policy, there will probably be some discussion in between probably and some.
Okay.
Okay, next paragraph. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences down. At the end of it, wheelchair, you just need to make the word one word. I'm being very picky.
Wheelchair.
You just got space in there between the
2 words.
Yeah, just make it one word. So it's silly. Then under members report, second paragraph, second sentence, we have a preliminary plan to review instead of a pre-military. That's it. That's it. Good job.
It could be military. You never know.
Good. That's why I wanted. So we need to change it.
That's another use for the building. Hey,
Hey, there you go.
call the DOD. See what we got.
Anyone else have other comments? Kathy covered a few of mine, mainly the typos, but under capital planning policy, Andrew, I think you summarized this really well, but also we that had to be at least an hour of discussion back and forth.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to put something in there of like extensive conversations on every edit, and then obviously we're going to be attaching
the marked up. Yeah.
the marked up version, so someone could see that there was definitely discussion on whether we accepted or not. I don't know.
I'll just say those changes were accepted or edited in a new draft after extensive discussions.
Yes.
Yeah, I started to kind of type out the changes. I was like, no.
Yeah, other than that, I thought it was covered very well considering the level of detail that discussion went into.
Yeah. Okay.
Did anyone else have any other edits? Did anyone have any objections to any of the edits raised? All right, then I will move that we accept the edits as edited in this discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jeff. Any further discussion? All right, roll call. Braccio. You're on mute.
Sorry, aye.
Cook.
Aye.
Hark.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. So those passed unanimously. So next one is approval of executive session meeting minutes from November 10, 2020. So as a reminder, just in terms of procedure here, we are not voting to release these minutes if we do actually approve them tonight. If anyone has any edits that would involve referencing content, we cannot discuss them in regular session. So really the reason this is on the agenda is to check and see whether people need me to schedule an executive session at the end of our next meeting solely for the purpose of discussing any edits to the executive session minutes. Before I open it up, Mark, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot, given that this was a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. Have they approved their meeting minutes in executive session for this yet?
I'm sorry, what's the date, Jason?
November 10th, related to South Union School.
Yes, I believe that they have.
Okay. So what is the process or procedure that you could recommend? Just, I kind of know the answer, but I wanted to hear it from you for the benefit of the rest of the committee, given that there's already another set of minutes out there. I have no idea whether they match or don't match or are consistent, et cetera. How do you deal with this typically?
Sure. So the board has them on the agenda. We send them to the board in advance to take a look at. We put them on the agenda for approval. The board either has two options. One, they can approve them as is. If there's anyone that has any comments or wants to suggest any changes, then we will schedule an executive session, as Jason discussed, for the next meeting, at which time those minutes can be amended in executive session as well as approved in executive session.
Okay. And I'm mistaken. It's the November 17th executive session. The November 10th one we did not have a quorum for. So
Yes,
those
the 17th
approved?
is done. Yes.
Okay. So because those are also done, we obviously still need to have our own minutes. What if there's a conflict between whatever is written in these minutes and whatever BOS has, obviously given that we haven't seen those? Or is that just writer in committee views?
I think it's just going to be how you're viewing it. That's all.
Okay. So did folks have edits to those minutes of those that were present for that discussion?
Jason, one thing before you get going, actually, we held those at the last meeting because someone wanted to make a comment. So those are on our 12:15 agenda under executive session to make comments. I just had to look at the draft agenda. So the November 17th minutes will be discussed on 12:15 in executive.
Jason, would it be worth it just to go to that executive session and approve joint minutes?
Mark, what are your thoughts?
If your committee is fine with the minutes, then I see no reason to do that. But I'd have to check with Marty to see whether he'd want to do that or not.
Okay.
I'm
Any
fine
other
with the
thoughts?
minutes.
Okay.
I'm fine with them.
And you get 2 votes.
Lisa, have you read both of them and are they consistent?
Can I even address that, Mark?
I don't know.
Since neither of them are public, you can say yes or no.
Well, can I say that one is more detailed than the other?
You just did. Yeah,
You could tell me yes or no, I could say that.
I was
As
gonna
long as-
I was
if-
gonna guess that was the case even
Yes.
without
yes.
seeing the other set.
I think, yeah, otherwise I think they're very similar, Kathy.
All right. Did anyone have any edits to the content then? Don't tell me you have, I just need a yes, no. Does anyone have does anyone have edits? Is there any yeses?
Yes, some small ones.
All right. So then here's what we're gonna do. We're meeting next Monday with 1 agenda item. I'll just do an executive on the back end to just be able to talk freely and get, I mean, I think it's important to have the minutes accurate, even if it's a small typo, Andrew. I just don't want to jeopardize any of the content for obvious reasons.
We have time.
Okay. All right, everyone good with that approach? Are there any others other than Andrew that plan to bring edits to that meeting? Just okay. All right, so I will add it to the agenda whenever we post for next week. Under chairman's update, before I actually go into the listed topics, I just wanted to make sure everyone had read and digested the email from the town clerk, both on chairman's reports and member reports, and the requirement to not only be as specific as possible, and if you could at least tell from how I've tried to structure our agendas. If I know about a topic, I've obviously listed it, but I think there's always times when things come up that, you know, you just want to report on, whether it be myself as the chair or any of you as members. I just think we need to be very cognizant of that moving forward based on the decision that he forwarded from another municipality in terms of open meeting law. So I sent around kind of some parameters. I tend to try to post about the week before, if at all possible. I can always amend, but just so we're never coming close to the 48-hour notice. So if you have an agenda item you want to see discussed, I just need an email so I can add it to the agenda. Just say, I would like to discuss X, Y, Z. And then I'll decide whether that goes under members report or whether it's a separate item, depending on the nature of the content. But I would like to, I mean, I think I need to set an example in terms of chairman is not straying from whatever I have on my 2 items. And I'm happy to revise an agenda if something comes up after I posted it, but just so everyone understood the process that I was planning to take moving forward based on that. Any questions on that? All right, so the BOS legislative update. So Representative Dykema and Senator Eldridge, I believe, are appearing at the next BOS meeting, which is next week. Mark had widely distributed an email asking for topics. I just wanted to inform the committee that given the deadline, I submitted a request to Mark asking for a viewpoint on capital items. And if the state, if they saw any sort of priority that they were going to be giving to capital projects. And hopefully, you know, Mark or Lisa, you can expand upon that in the actual BOS meeting in terms of, are they going to prioritize school construction, building, you know, public safety building, which we obviously don't need? Are they going to, prioritize, more of the economic development items that we've seen in the last couple of months here? And obviously nothing's set in stone, but just getting any sort of reading of the tea leaves, just so we're ready to react and are, caught flat-footed as best as possible, but also kind of allowing that as an opportunity. And Lisa, I don't know if this is you or the chair, how you drive your conversation, but letting them know that we have some significant capital needs coming up. And I know that they were very helpful with the public safety building, at least getting something for the community. It wasn't obviously what others have tried to get for their communities, but at least knowing the cycle that we're headed into and just keeping us either A, apprised of what's going on, even if they don't have a good reading of the tea leaves now, but B, if they do have a good reading of the tea leaves, obviously it'd be helpful to know that so that we can, think through and we have shovel-ready projects later on our agenda. So, and then the next one is, I'm going to probably keep this as like a tee up for what's coming. With my advisory hat on, I'm the fire department liaison, but as many of you have probably seen more publicly, they have published a standard of cover, which basically Chief Achilles did a pretty top to bottom review of his department now about a year and almost a year, I guess it is a year and a half since he was sworn in. And one of the things that is now top of mind to them that is not on the capital plan, that we will have a future discussion with Chief Achilles, is water supply, and the need for what we call in the fire service a tender. Some of you might hear about as a tanker, especially that would service the areas of town that do not have municipal water supply. So i.e. no fire hydrants in the area, and or even if they have cisterns, which are basically ponds that you can tap into, not sustainable sources depending upon the nature of the event that the department goes to. So it will likely be in one of our January sessions that Chief Achilles will come. I didn't want anyone to be kind of blindsided by it, but what I would like all of you to do is read his standard of cover. It's posted on their Facebook, it's posted on their website. If anyone needs a copy, I'm happy to get you a copy. It's like a 50-page document, but I think you're skimming through that's their greatest need. Obviously, we could choose to take action, we could choose not to take action, but I know Mr. Stivers also has had put on the BOS goals for this year, thinking about how to deal with the Pine Hill water supply without maybe going and actually putting a full water line down that road per se. And there's obviously a lot of neighborhoods off that road. So that is coming, but I also wanted everyone to have time to look around and educate yourself before it pops up onto an agenda. And then I did not put the stabilization policy on this agenda, given what we have to tackle tonight in our quick meeting next week. But I just wanted to give you an update on that. And then the final thing is you'll notice that there is not an update from the school research subcommittee on this evening's meeting, mainly because we haven't met since our last meeting, but there will be an update next Monday based on our meeting this Thursday night. Pause there. Any questions on any of that?
I've got one probably really stupid question, because as you know, I'm very interested in the Pine Hill water issue. A tanker is, we already have a truck that can carry water, right? Some
1,000
water.
gallons.
So this truck would carry a lot more than that?
2, 3, or 4, depending on what size you buy.
All right.
Gives you about, yeah. So I'll let the chief walk through it, but he'll come with a lot of data and a lot of new training that they're doing. And I'll let him articulate it when he comes. Members report. So the only member I heard from, and this was really a holdover from the last meeting, was Ms. Brascio had some follow-up on the town-owned parcel presentation. So, Lisa?
Just quickly, I haven't had the opportunity yet to be on an agenda. I'll be on the next Open Space Preservation Commission agenda. Andrew, I wasn't sure if you were dealing with recreation or I was reaching out to recreation.
I sent it to Tim and he said he would take a look, but other than that, I haven't really followed up, but either you or I, but that's the extent at which I've been involved.
Okay, so no, that's fine. So I can actually send out a request. I know they have a meeting coming up. I think it's actually not next week because that's the planning board meeting that they're doing a joint meeting on, but on their next agenda, Andrew, I'll just request that one of us be allowed to come and speak briefly to it.
Or both.
Or both, exactly. You know what, and we can forward the presentation as well. So hopefully, Jason, will probably won't be until the beginning of the year, I would think, before we can get both committees to meet and give some feedback.
Okay. All right. On to capital planning policy. So I know we spent a lot of time on this in the last meeting. I circulated where we were at. I know that Andrew had circulated another way to work through some of these items that people were going to take a view. So I guess what I think will work best before we dive into any of the details is maybe just do a quick round the horn to understand where everyone's at, where they want to go with some of the items that are outstanding, and hopefully find a way to consensus. So I will go reverse alphabetical. So Andrew, I will start with you.
I think besides that, just whether or not anybody wants to entertain changing the definition or adjusting it, but other than that, I'm okay. And I'm at this point, whatever the committee decides is fine.
Joe.
I sort of stand where I was the last time, where I left off, where I really just believe there should be two separate policies. So, but I'm not opposed to the committee moving forward. Committee has to make decisions. So that's just about where I sit. It's about all.
And where do you sit on the definition piece?
Well, my problem is because I am where I am with two separate plans, it doesn't make sense for me to be worried about the definition, because I think there should be two totally different definitions. And I'm not sure, I would be crafting them for two different purposes. So I wouldn't interfere with that because of where I stand. Does that make sense?
It does. All right, Jeff.
I have no additional comments since the last time that we went through, but, in reading the definition, that Andrew sent over to us, I just want to make sure that we're careful as we go through it, just to make sure it's not going to inadvertently exclude items that have historically been capitalized that should continue to be capitalized. I know you brought up the example of some of the vehicles, right, where that might not actually fall into what the definition would be. I'd like to kind of hear some thoughts from the rest of the committee on that as well as we go through. If we so choose to go through the definitional piece.
I think we have to.
Yeah.
Kathy?
So the good news is I have almost caught up with you guys. I'm actually still troubled by the definition. It's still not, I think, quite right, but I hate when people criticize something they don't have a suggestion. So I still don't know what I think really should be changed. So I think it's close, but I don't think it's quite what it should be. So that's my feeble comment as far as the definition goes. But Joe, I'm still worried about the fact that you think we are doing the right thing here. So I wish you would not feel that way, legitimately, and not feel like you've just been talked into it. So that still bothers me. When I saw the minutes about the stabilization policy, and I don't think Andrew meant this. It's not, of course, the committee's job to talk about the town's stabilization, overall stabilization policy. That's outside our purview. We certainly can talk specifically about a capital stabilization fund. That is within our purview, I think. But I want to make that clear too, that we're not talking about the broad stabilization policy of the town.
That part makes sense. And I think Mark and Brian, if capital decides to recommend something on capital stabilization moving forward, I think then the decision will be whether that's a broader definition that pulls in more parties or whether you stick specifically to capital, right? Like whether there's two buckets or there's one bucket, right? Is that a fair way of putting it? See Brian's lips moving. Did anyone hear him?
No, but I think what Brian was saying is that sounds good. Yeah.
I saw a thumbs up, so we'll note that for the record.
And this is a little bit outside the scope, but just to remind everybody, advisory has a white paper on stabilization. Andrew Pfaff knows it. He's read it. I'm not sure if Jason has yet, but we spent a lot of work on this 10 years ago. So it's not something that has not been given a whole lot of thought. Of course, you get new committee members and people think things differently. So it's certainly worth rediscussing, but it's not like there hasn't been a whole lot of thought already to the town's stabilization policy.
So Kathy, before I go to Lisa, you're saying you can't, or you don't like the definition, but you can't articulate what you don't like?
That sums it up pretty well. I mean, there's just, for example, police cars are capital, to me, they're capital assets, right?
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So, I mean, it's very good. I still think there's something.
So let me ask that question. Let me clarifying. Are you bothered by the definition that's in the one with the town letterhead, or the one that Andrew Pfaff circulated as a potential alternative, or both?
Well, I thought the one that Andrew circulated was better, so that's the one I focused on.
Okay.
Jason, I found one other one that's very similar to what we have, but has one other line that I just want to read. That I
Do you want to? Are you in a position to just pop it on the screen so everyone can read it with you?
No.
Okay. So yeah, just read it out loud and then we'll.
So it's basically, this is from the town of Lunenburg. Their capital projects definition is one, very similar to ours. Capital projects, also referred to as capital assets, are any tangible item that costs $10,000 or more and has a useful life of 3 years or longer. So very similar to ours, but they use 3 years. But they add a number 2, individual items that cost at least $10,000 and groups of items of the same purpose that cost at least $10,000 are both capital projects.
So that would bring in, like, for example, the TASER program, which
Correct.
is sometimes 10,000, sometimes 9,000.
And there would be a group of, say, 5 $10,000 things, or say it was $5,000 over 5 years, or $25,000 over 5 years, $5,000 a year. It would be a group of 5 $5,000 items and trip that $10,000 hurdle. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
But I think all we need to do is add that one line, and I'm good with what we got. They use 3 years versus 5. I'm kind of indifferent on what the, on IT, sometimes you do a 3-year CapEx.
So copy paste that and email to me, and then I'll pull up the policy on the screen.
Sure.
What? So while he does that, Lisa, where are you at?
So, I really haven't changed all that much. I think I'm at a cross between the two definitions, but if I had to choose one today, I actually like what Andrew just read, and I do like the 3-year. So I'd be interested to see once it's up on the screen. I think I could go with that.
I don't know that it matters, but the old capital budget committee bylaw had exactly that in it as a definition of capital asset. We had $10,000 in 3 years. So we're being very consistent with what we had in the past too.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. Just making sure I don't have anything open I shouldn't. Can everyone see the capital planning policy?
We do.
All right. Does anyone need me to zoom, or you're good?
You make it one page by chance?
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks.
All right. So I've highlighted what Andrew just read out loud. So does anyone have any objections to how this is written, i.e. exactly what I have written in here?
I think you should change the 5 to 3 though, based on what Andrew brought up as an example.
Well, but that's the first paragraph. I'm just talking about the second paragraph.
Oh,
he
just the
added.
start? No, sorry.
So individual items that cost at least $10,000 and groups of items that of the same purpose that cost at least $10,000 are both capital projects. Is there any objection from any member of the committee on that statement?
So you need to say the same purpose that costs at least $10,000 for the group to make sure it's clear. We're talking about now you're aggregating the group. I mean, it's probably clear.
I would only suggest changing to the last word to items versus projects because we're already defining capital items.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I like items better too.
Me too.
Okay, so we're gonna go with the second sentence.
Yes.
Right, so I'm going to accept that. Now, the first one, I think we have a question of 5 or 3. Is there any other questions other than that in the first sentence?
I guess, is there anything in the past that's been less than 3 years that's been, let's call it well north of $10,000?
We would catch that in the next one anyway, even if it was 2 years, right?
Yeah, that's why it's a good catch-all.
Okay.
It's basically, I want to see anything that's going to cost $10,000. Doesn't matter. I mean, we really don't need the years, but
That would be, essentially would be an asset on your balance sheet. Right, because there's plenty of things that cost more than 10,000, right? But this is something that you'd actually have that's a tangible asset.
Yeah.
Anything we're,
I'm confused. Are we combining these two sentences?
Yes.
Okay.
What if,
Yeah.
what if, Jason, the town decided to buy $100,000 worth of lettuce? The useful
Sorry,
life of
what?
lettuce,
What?
of lettuce or vegetable. Useful life of lettuce, I don't know, what is 2 weeks or something? Would that, I guess it's not a project, but it's a tangible asset. Would that
I
be?
don't
Someone
know.
can fit that in their budget, then we've got bigger issues.
I don't know that I would call that a tangible asset. Yeah, I know it's you can touch it, but
I'm fine if we don't include that. I was just thinking of like what wouldn't qualify, and the perishable goods is the only thing I think that has a short useful life. I don't know.
what if we bought like $10,000 worth of paper or something, or envelopes?
In theory, you should be able to hold on to envelopes for more than 1 year or 2 years.
and we're not trying to pick that up though. So those are two things that are not things that we want to be looking at.
But if we bought, would that fall into this definition?
We're saying the catch-all would bring it in.
So if you said, if it was an and test and not an or test, if it was an and test, it wouldn't catch it. If it's an or test, it catches it.
Right.
But to that point, paper has a useful life of over 3 years or 5 years.
Could you put something in there where it's generally accepted to be capitalized?
And then what's the definition of generally accepted?
Then that's
I wouldn't agree that paper is, yeah, you buy a bunch of it last, but that's not still what we're talking about here. We're not talking about monitoring paper purchases.
I know we're not talking about that. I'm just saying by the definition, would that fall?
Hypotheticals that could get caught. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I'm trying to break the definition.
I also think there's a realm of possibility, a practicality that needs to go into this. In that, let's just say Mark decided it was in the town's best interest to buy $10,000 worth of paper, and our definition caught it by some way, shape, or form. We can always just say thanks, but no thanks. We're not weighing in on this because we don't view it as part of this policy. Now, it then creates a transparency for someone else to look into why in the world do you need $10,000 of copy paper at one time. But
Yeah, but that's someone else's job, not ours.
no, I understand, but I'm just saying, I guess I'm not worried that if something got caught up in here by accident, because I think we're going to learn. My view is that this is version 1 that will eventually be adopted. And if we find something that's getting caught up in here that was never the intent, then you adjust as you go, right? And you propose a small tweak to the BOS and they adopt the policy, assuming they agree with the tweak. But I think if we sit here and try to think of all the what ifs, I think we all know that if there was a practical situation that was brought forward to us, like paper or anything else like that, we would think about whether it should apply. And if it didn't apply, think about the way to tweak the wording.
Just
I
the,
think that we're overthinking this, and good job, Andrew. Yes, these are two things you tried and you succeeded, but there is no one else that's going to say, well, you got 10,000 bucks, so let us put it on your balance sheet or paper. I'm pretty sure.
Jason, just one quick thing, not to be persnickety, but the change that Andrew just put in that second sentence, isn't that really redundant with the second sentence in number 6?
So that's bulk purchases of similar items like software or furniture with expected useful lifespans of 5 or more years that when aggregated have a total cost exceeding the capital threshold. It is redundant, I agree.
So I think you pick where you want to put that and keep it there.
Thoughts?
I'm fine with either way. I think we just need to sync up if we're doing 3 or 5.
Yeah.
I think you keep it above because it's an important gating question.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yep, I
Yeah.
agree.
Okay, so we're going to delete this here, bulk purchases.
Yep.
Or let me just propose something else. How about we move this? I like this wording a little better than the second paragraph up here because I think the 10,000 gets very redundant. What I would suggest is we take this bulk purchases sentence and replace what Andrew found in Lunenburg's. Just a thought. Because we use the word 10,000 3 times in 2 sentences.
I think that's fine because then you reference the capital threshold.
Okay, so what are you saying exactly, Jason, under definition? What do you want to say?
The first line will stay as is, absent a judgment on 5 or 3.
Okay.
And then we have 2 options. We either keep this as is and delete this bulk purchases down here, or we move bulk purchases up and delete this part, individual items that cost at least 10,000.
That's fine.
What if we were to just keep the individual items that cost at least 10,000 and then replace the rest with or bulk items?
I think that's covered, Jeff, by just seeing a capital threshold. And you define 10,000
Oh, in
as
the
capital
first paragraph.
threshold.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but then Jason, we have to define capital threshold at the top. Perfect.
All right, so is there any objection to moving this bulk purchases up?
Nope.
Excellent comment, Mark. All right. I'm going to accept this so we can actually see where we're at. All right, so 5 or 3. I'm just going to go down the list. Lisa,
3.
Kathy,
3.
Jeff,
I think 3.
Joe, anyone here, Joe?
I'll abstain.
All right, Andrew.
3.
All right, and I'm fine with 3, so I will move this to 3. So do we have a definition?
I think we do.
I'm going to accept everything here.
Okay,
I'll let everyone read it, given the importance of the section.
I don't want to be picky. Maybe you guys talked about this. Why do we have software in here?
Here,
Where's this?
it's in the bulk purchases.
It's capitalizable.
Well, it's not a tangible asset, though. I didn't say it wasn't capitalizable. It is. I agree. In certain circumstances.
Yeah, I would think you would want it in here for the main purpose of making, not necessarily that we're going to provide a lot of value unless we have IT background on our membership, but more to make sure that MTC and other experts are appropriately weighing in on a recommendation.
I don't disagree that it should be there. It's just, it's not tangible, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It should be
Maybe
And I
maybe I
like the word
misspoke.
tangible.
That's fair because tangible is in the thing. I mean, my intention, right, is that it's any asset that you may put on your balance sheet, like a typical, right? And now, government accounting is very different than private sector accounting, but software, unless like, for example, the Microsoft license that they have probably for email accounts is a recurring fee every year,
Right. So
right?
when is that-
Versus if you
But-
buy a piece of software that you're actually going to amortize over many years, that's what we're looking to capture here.
But would we opine on like ClearGov? I would think would be nice.
That's a license fee, right? In most instances, Mark, is what you probably have in town, are license fees.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I can't think of anything we've bought that would qualify as, internally developed software or something like that, that you really would put on your balance sheet. So this may be not needed, but I still like it. I like the word. So I mean, I think it should be there in case, but it's not tangible.
So we leave it as this, which kind of brings in a lot. And if we find that too much is coming in, the other one I sent around is very specific to like construction, renovation, major equipment, maintenance, that we can look at that a different time.
Okay. So under these include items 1 through 7. I updated for 3 and 5 down in bullet point 7. I replaced 3 for the 5 that was here. Did anyone else have any objections to how it ended after we edited this document?
Don't you need to change the 5 to the 3 in the bulk purchases sentence?
Yes.
You said number 3. Does that need to be changed? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what I heard you said on that one.
Kathy set up in the definition, which I just
No,
changed.
sorry, no. Item number 3, these include.
I don't think that one needs, because this is extending useful lifespans versus an asset having a life of. So I think it's different. That's at least how I interpret it. Does anyone interpret it differently?
It is different, so you can have a different number there if you want to.
I don't disagree. I'm just asking. Okay.
Any other comment under these include? Under funding source, was there any open items that you didn't feel like I captured as we were discussing? Seeing no, I'm going to keep going unless anyone yells at me. Under process, is everything captured there? All right, prioritization of capital items. I'm just going to go all the way the whole page because there's really not a lot going on here.
Do we want to just caveat it that in no particular order?
It's a good question. Brian, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you and I had a spirited back and forth when we were initially drafting this, right? On that particular point. I don't know if you want to just offer your viewpoint of that. Yeah, your mic's not working. Mark, do you have a view on that?
No, I really don't. Like I said, I defer to Brian on that, but unfortunately you don't get to hear from him tonight.
Brian, you want to try to log out and come back in and see if that changes it? I think there was, to paraphrase, I do think there was some concern about, like, what is the right order then, right? Is this or should there be an order, right? Like, so, like, I think intentionally keeping it like this gives you a little bit of leeway that if like bullet point 3 became a huge issue, like how do you balance that against bullet point 1? Which I get is where you're going, Andrew, in terms of in no particular order, but I think there was also some method to the madness of drafting it in this order because it's likely, right? Not set in stone. It's likely to be how you would look at things, right? If a roof is collapsing in a building that everyone needs to be in, even if it wasn't on the capital plan, do you accelerate that in front of something that maybe is nice to have, may lower your maintenance costs or be more energy friendly, but in no way is failing. So that was kind of, I actually don't have a view one way or another, but I don't know if others do.
Well, I think you either say these are priorities from highest to lowest, or, I mean, right now we're leaving it ambiguous, or you tier them, high, medium, or something like that, and you group them. I don't know.
Other
Or you
thoughts?
leave it like it is and it's flexible. So Brian is chatting with you, Jason, but he didn't finish what he said. Like the idea of priority, but I don't know what the but is.
I keep reading because I got a lot of. It's tough to see when you have. You can read it whenever he finishes.
He signed off. He's coming back.
Yeah, I don't even have the chat feature doesn't even pop up right now for me because of.
I mean, there's definitely a prioritization.
Yeah.
I think we say there's a prioritization or define it someplace else, or just leave it as is. I'm indifferent at this point.
I mean, I'll be completely honest, the first version when I tried to collapse these and shared it with Brian for some feedback, I had in order, I had the exact, I had in order of priority and we removed it out.
Yeah.
To create kind of the ambiguity, because I think the problem with policies too, right, is you don't want to lock yourself too far into a corner that you're then you're kind of arguing against yourself on the fly.
Well, I'm thinking, I mean, we can have our own internal prioritization as a committee. It doesn't have to be in a policy. It'd just be how we decide that we want to stack rank things, right?
Yeah, because so the other thing to consider, right, is for anyone that looked at some of the other towns, they actually score. Like they created a grid, which I think is very dangerous because I think you need to take into account the bigger picture of what's going on, and I don't think there's one size fits all, right? Like who knows how some of the projects that have been approved that maybe accomplished a lot of goals as opposed to one goal would have scored on some matrix because maybe none of them were urgent, but the sum of a few urgent is good or bad, I don't know. So I would vote on it either way, to be honest with you. So I don't know if anyone else has a strong view one way or another.
My view is keeping it ambiguous and letting this committee or advisory or selectmen kind of do their job of vetting based upon these lists.
I think there's a lot of ties here. I don't, different people would pick different. I mean, obviously the first one is first. But after that, it's you can get a whole lot of people with a lot of different ways to arrange these. So I agree with Andrew that I'd leave it with the flexibility to, after you get past the first one, to basically decide at that time.
So Andrew, that would then mean you do not want to put in in no order, or you want to add that in for additional clarification?
I could go either way. I think in no particular order really means you're not keeping any kind of, I mean, right now you don't have any prioritization, right? You're just saying the conditions are considered. So I guess you can leave it as is. I just threw that out there in case people wanted a clarification.
Okay. I'm not hearing any strong opinion, so I'm going to move forward unless anyone has anything else on that. And then that was pretty much it. We had struck this one sentence, but we had agreed to that in the discussion. So I think we have a general agreement on content. I think we've heard where some of the dissent may be. I think we have two paths forward. Path A is we can vote tonight and have Mark and Brian do a final proofread, and then they can distribute to the Board of Selectmen in advance of their meeting. Option B is I can accept the changes, circulate it to the committee, and we just do a final vote next Monday. So everyone has a chance to read the clean draft. Technically, it still would be before the next BOS meeting, but in fairness to them, I don't know that you can just plop it on their lap Tuesday morning, given the need for the public packet, et cetera. So if we went that route, then what I would also say is, do we want to send a draft to the BOS just so that they can digest it, and then just come back if there's any minor typographical items? Because I don't hear the content changing, but I also want to make sure there's no like glaring typos before it goes to the BOS, especially rather us find those than someone else find those.
I'd rather go with Plan B because there's a couple little typos I would change. I just hate being so darn picky.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have the time to get it really perfect. But I like the idea of giving it to them in draft form, saying this is close. You know, it's not going to change much. You see it final. So here it is.
Yeah.
And then have
I
one
think
more chance to.
they should have it on their next meeting agenda to review it. I think it's pretty much buttoned up. And maybe just they don't vote on it in that meeting. I'd like to hear too what their edits are, if any.
Yeah, so Lisa or Mark, does that plan sound okay to you? I guess Lisa sitting as a voting member there, and Mark in terms of how you form your agendas.
I'm
Marco?
deferring to my vice chair.
Well, I'm not, I think that's fine, except I'm not sitting in on the agenda meeting tomorrow, so I guess I defer to you, Mr. Purple.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we could take up. We could take up tomorrow. I mean, I know that we've got a lot of stuff on the on the agenda, and we're going to have to figure out what we're taking out and what we're leaving in. So
It doesn't sound like you want to have a discussion on this before the new year. This is the last meeting of 2020, right? Unless you have something unexpected.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the last meeting. I mean, I don't know what it's going to generate for discussion. I think it is, going to be something that I think the board's going to want to discuss, and is going to need a little bit of walking through with. So it's probably going to be a January item, Jason, if I'm guessing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking over the draft agenda, and I agree, Mark. I just don't think there's any way to fit it in for the 15th.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mark, add it to your list of items that need to go on a future agenda.
Okay.
And our committee will vote likely next week, and then BOS has a chance to vet that as they see fit.
Okay.
And to be clear, is this going to be part of the bylaw that forms the capital planning committee or not?
I don't think it should be. I think it's a separate policy that goes as part of anything broader that Mark, Brian, and the team are working on for financial policies in this town.
Okay, so it does not have to go in front of the town.
No, I think we just need the BOS as the executives to adopt the policy and endorse it, essentially.
Good.
Yep.
All right, let me just make sure I save this before we move on. Is everyone good with that plan? Any final comments on that? All right, back to the agenda. All right, annual town meeting article placeholders. So my understanding, Mark, is the BOS plans to close the warrant next Tuesday. Is that the plan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So procedurally, depending on where we land tonight, do you need an email from me saying this is what capital planning would like to see on the agenda, on the warrant related to our items, other than obviously the capital articles?
No, so there's already a placeholder for the capital article,
Okay.
which would list all of those items. So at this point, I don't need all the detail. I just need to make sure that there's at least an article placeholder, if not specific language. So you're covered.
Okay. So I guess other items that, pending the committee being okay with them, is and that we can't sponsor the articles. We're going to need BOS to sponsor them for us, but establish, basically making this committee permanent. So a warrant article related to that, a warrant article related to the fire PPE fund, to set that up. I'm just looking at you like you look like, and you need a reminder on that one.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Remember, Chief Achilles wanted $125,000 for fire PPE next year. And before he came in front of us, I worked with him to actually look at his actual inventory of gear. He doesn't need $125,000 of gear next year. He only needs $40,000. So we were going to set up that PPE fund so that if, like, for example, they have a firefighter that's leaving this month. Unless they hire one of their call people that already have gear, they're going to have to go out and shell out $5,000 for new gear for whoever they hire from the outside. So the goal was to give him parameters to work within to buy gear and have a fund there just for purposes of funding PPE gear, and it gets refilled as you see either gear expiring under the NFPA guidelines, or if we have a major turnover or major additions, like you go and add another guy to each shift.
So this is a separate warrant article just for this.
I think you have to, if you don't have the fund in place right now, Mark, to do something like that, right?
Right.
And it's 40, it's going to go in at the first year?
That's what we voted on, yeah. And it'll go down eventually to 20 to 25 after year like 3 or 4. But the key, remember, the key selling point there is obviously not spending the money when we don't need to, but also not replacing gear that doesn't need to be replaced, and just arbitrarily buying new gear because a lot of other people need it. Like just going with the actual dates, because everyone's gear is getting replaced on different dates based on the age and vintage of it. So it's a placeholder. We can come back and discuss it further, but all we're doing right now is a placeholder. Mark would need final language within, I mean, we presented it to them, remember, in October.
Jason, would that essentially be part of the capital article, though?
I think the funding would be. You can think about it, Mark, if you want to, but it would be like the chief needs to be able to access that at any point in time when he has a new member, or he has someone's gear gets damaged in a fire and it's beyond repair. He needs to be able to access it.
It's much more like, Mark, the facilities warrant article that's separate. It's so you put money in it, then you replenish it every year. So I guess it probably should be separate.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, we could do that. I could look at putting a placeholder in for that as well.
Whatever is needed to accomplish that goal, as opposed to revising our capital plan and having 125 next year, is at least where this member sits. Like to buy some flexibility here and not pay for stuff we don't need. That makes sense? I'm assuming Yes?
Yes.
Okay. South Union, if anything's needed there, BOS will handle that.
I have to assume so.
Okay. Can we just put a placeholder so no one forgets about it?
Sure. I'm just opening up the draft warrant now and just adding stuff in as we talk.
Okay.
So if I appear a little distracted, that's why.
Okay. Were there any other items that anyone thought we needed from a capital perspective as a placeholder for the annual town meeting?
Not for this one, but I know we were going to talk at some point in time about capital stabilization fund. But that's a different
Yes.
year.
Jason, can I ask a process question?
Go ahead, Lisa.
So, and again, this may have been answered already. I just, I can't remember off the top of my head. So if the capital committee becomes a full committee at town meeting, when does the adjustment get made to the 3 members of advisory, and what do we or the board, or what does the moderator need to do to make it so the advisory members can serve on a standalone committee?
Kathy, do you want to provide the update on where we stand on that?
Yes, and Lisa, it's still being discussed, but we just got an email the last couple of days from John Butler that might change this. So what we are proposing to do to the advisory bylaw, there's 3 things. 2 are fairly cut and dry. This is a little bit different. So right now, the language in the advisory bylaw says advisory members can be on 1 ad hoc committee, period. So the easy thing to do is to change it to not say ad hoc. It could be 1 ad hoc or 1 standing committee, but only 1. Still have to be approved by majority of the advisory committee has to vote for it. So there's your, you've got 1 guardrail there. And of course, the person who's being appointed is going to be appointed by someone else. It's either going to be probably board of selectmen, could be moderator. So you've got 2 guardrails, but the easy thing to do is just to change the language in the current advisory bylaw to say, get rid of the ad hoc or add ad hoc and or standing, but still 1 committee, which would then allow the 3 advisory members to stay on the capital planning committee. The issue that is going to be discussed now is then right now, the advisory member can't vote on that committee's, whatever they're coming from advisory for. So they just have to stand down, not participate, and not even be part of the quorum for that night. So we're thinking about changing that. I'm not sure we're going to end up being able to change that based on something we heard tonight. So anyway, that's how we could solve it, is just get rid of the ad hoc or add standing to the language.
Is that a town meeting vote, Kathy, for that? So does Mark need to put a placeholder in
And
for
he
that?
has. He
Oh,
has.
there is. Okay, I just wanted to
So
verify. and make
again,
sure.
we're asking board of selectmen to sponsor those, sponsor that warrant article, right? Be the sponsor of it. So we are going to get the language to you guys soon as far as what at least advisory things should be there. And you guys can take it from here.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure if we're putting a placeholder in to make capital, its own committee, that we also take care of the other side as well. So, okay, thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay. So I will, Mark, do you need anything formal on that, or you have the placeholders needed?
No, I don't. I think I'm all set. I already have a placeholder in for the disposition of 21 Highland, should in fact we get there. So I think anything that's required of that, Jason, we could roll that into that article.
Okay. Okay. Going to move on to the next topic then. So you all, shortly before this meeting, should have received a forwarded note of a document that Kathy drafted. I personally have not had a chance to read through it. But I guess, Kathy, maybe if you could just give some background on why you thought it was relevant now and what you want the committee to weigh in on, if anything, or if it's more of a FYI sort of document at this point?
What I'd like everybody to do, obviously, is read it and decide whether, oh, let me back up. The reason I think this is important is because I do think we need to outline for the town what all we're looking at as far as changes in buildings. So this is just a building document. And I've tried to list every realistic possibility that I'm aware of, but I'm only one person in this document, so that we kind of know what all of our choices are going forward. In my mind, that's kind of the biggest thing we can do at this point. And of course involves the school choices too. But there's one that I didn't want us to forget, and I think we've kind of stopped talking about it, but it's one that was definitely desired a couple of years ago. And I haven't heard too many people talk about it recently, but I didn't want to forget it because at that time, there really was a desire to have a overall community center that would basically accommodate everyone, old to young, young to old. And there really was a pretty big consensus that was desired by the senior center, the senior folks, and the rec folks. That's who came to advisory to basically express their desire to do it. This happened at the time we were talking about the public safety building for the first time, and we were asking all departments what projects they foresaw in the next 30 years so that we would make sure that the public safety building didn't cannibalize everybody else's desires. So that's where this came out of. So I still want to have it on there. It may not be something we do, but I didn't want to forget that one. So I thought this would be a good working document that we have. We can modify it as time goes on, but at least get in our minds what our choices here as we go forward, deciding whether we're going to close a school or not. So I've tried to be really specific about what each of these changes or each of these decisions would mean. And I've tried to show which ones I think are probably independent from others. There's some that are dependent on others, but there's a couple like South Union that I'm not sure is dependent on anything as far as moving forward goes. So again, this is just one person's stab at doing this. So I want everybody to read this and see if we can come up with something we agree on as far as what we think the road forward could be as far as town buildings go.
So I appreciate you doing this, Kathy, and I think it's important to have it now. So I'm glad you did it now and not maybe in January, because I think when we foreshadow, we're going to know what the enrollment data tells the school research subcommittee in basically a month at this point. And then I think things are going to start moving one way or another, right? Either we're going to say we need to move on without the schools, or we need to move on with the schools, and here's how we build a comprehensive plan for Southborough. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I also think this is going to be really relevant when we have Jeff Shaw in next week, and he starts talking about what he saw as an outside-in perspective, especially at Woodward. I guess my question for you, Kathy, is the community center concept, and I think Mr. Healy in particular has mentioned this many times this year at the BOS meetings. If Woodward's in play, like i.e. available for town use in any way, shape, or form, that's basically could be viewed as a community center, given the constituents that may take ownership per se of that building. Is that a fair statement or no?
It's not an unfair statement. The only maybe slight issue with that, if you think of a community center that's what it is and nothing else, if we end up with a community center, I don't see how we keep Cordova Hall, but I could be wrong. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in Cordova Hall besides the senior center, right? We've got 3 or 4 departments there. So those departments have to be dealt with also. So if we ended up, with Woodward being a community center and nothing else, then we've got to deal with what we do with Portable Hall. So Jason, I'm saying, I don't disagree with what you said, that it could, that could be a community center. There's no doubt about it. Or we could have a separate community center and use Woodward for something else. Or we might not close a school and then have a separate community center. So I'm trying to outline all this here.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was, I guess, crystal clear as we start thinking about Woodward versus no. Because I think then that leads to some of the dominoes that may fall from there of which path we go down.
One thing I did want to clarify, as far as knowing what your choices are, where your flexibility is, there's one thing that I think is pretty important to keep in mind. If we believe that NERI is going to be kept as a town building, one way or another, it's either going to be a school or it's going to be closed as a school and be a town building. If you start with that assumption, and maybe we don't, but I've assumed that we're going to keep NERI one way or another. We all know that NERI is going to have some work on it, no matter what. And it's going to be pretty expensive work. If we decide to close a school, and we want, and the work that needs to be done, and NERI is a school that's going to stand, and we want the state to reimburse us the 37% that Southborough gets for school buildings, we got to be very careful about how we do this. And Jason knows what I'm talking about here. So I tried to put a little bit of that in there too. So there definitely is some thinking behind how to time all this.
And I think that's what we'll have an update on after Thursday's meeting in particular. And I think it's going to be really important for this committee is going to have to start outlining like certain cost scenarios once we get to January, right? And I think that's where at least our discussions with the schools have been, is they're going to need our help to kind of see the bigger picture of like, if school has capital needs, where do those fit in timeline wise? And if we have capital needs, where do those fit in timeline wise from a budgetary perspective? You can't do it all at once, because we'll cause significant increase to all of our tax rates, or probably an unpalatable one unless people are really willing to pay for all this all at once. So Joe, I think you were trying to say something, so I want to go to you next.
Well, I was just wondering in the past discussions, if we were keeping all the schools and putting in a community center, the last time around this conversation went, what was the property determined to be a good place to put it?
We never got that far.
Okay, just wondering.
It's more of a dream than something that had taken concept at that point.
Jason, have you
there's some towns that have things like a community center where you had, some private funding that was part of it. So let's not lose sight of that too. So we're probably going to have to be creative here to get everything we want.
But wouldn't it be fair to say, Kathy, though, if Woodward came into play and you could move departments, I mean, Woodward would have everything that you could want in a community center. As far as, recreation opportunities, a full cafeteria being there and a library annex being there. And again,
what about a pool?
So
cafeteria.
I mean, I guess it would be what you'd be looking for in a community center. I mean, would you be looking for a gathering place or more of an aquatic center? So I guess it depending on what you're looking for.
No, not me to say, this is, what does the town want? I know there's some people that want a pool, so that's why I do that.
Well, that came up extensively in the public feedback. I know we got limited responses, so that was the most prominent one. I know
there's land out in front of Woodward right currently that you could repurpose.
No, it's Choate Field. Can't do it.
Yeah.
Deed restricted.
Maybe, but
yeah, where's anyone going to park?
It's all about how you choose to use it.
Well, there are certain restrictions on that particular property, though, Joe.
I understand that.
So, I think it's worth, because Kathy, you mentioned the pool concept. I think when the recreation director Tim was here, I think he's adamantly opposed to that. I think he's mentioned the economics of it, but obviously it is, if we are designing a community center at some point, that is something that needs to be well vetted, but I just figured, I know he said that many times in the public setting. I don't know where they put it on their master plan priorities, but I know it came back a lot on the feedback.
So Kathy, let me just clarify. So do you, in the document that you created, do you give the possibility? I know you a standalone community center, but do you also give the possibility of Woodward being a community center minus a pool, I guess?
I didn't say that on here, Lisa, specifically, but we can. I did say, we could use the Woodward for an auxiliary library. You could use it for a meeting place for, town clubs, Rotary Club, AA, things like that have to, have no place to be.
Yep.
I didn't say, I didn't use the words community center in that, but we can add that to it. This is for everybody to weigh in on.
Nope, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure that that possibility was included under the Woodward, and it sounds like you have. So thank you.
Anyone else on this?
The only Jason, with the architect and with NERI, I mean, obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done to NERI. Are we also looking through the option of building, like if we built a new NERI, like say where the athletic field is there, and then demoed NERI?
That's
Like,
not with that is a conversation the school research subcommittee
okay.
is going to have with the school committee, depending upon the enrollment. That is not part of what Jeff Shaw will talk about next week.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's cost benefit of new versus old.
That's what I'm, so you're basically alluding to where we're going to have to go. We're going to have to, regardless of whether that's viable or not, we at least need to show what that potentially would cost.
Correct.
Right? Like you can use some rough square footage. We know these are 70,000 square foot schools. We know what the cost of construction is right now. We know, like, you can get some good benchmarks to at least range this, to start to see what options have to fall out, just because it makes no sense financially versus, all right, these four have merit both from an operational and achieving goals and a financial.
Yep.
You
Okay.
know,
If you're going to go down that path, how long would you have to keep Woodward open for to get to 37%? How many years?
2023.
Oh, really? That long? Okay.
And we
It's
would,
2
I mean,
years.
the time this is done, you're going to be at 2023. So there's no issue with,
Oh, 2023. They've been 20 to 23 years. Okay.
no, 2023.
Okay.
So, but your question referenced the 37%. That's the million. That's the $10 million question, is what I'll call it, that we need to answer. Of how do you, if you were to do capital project at another school building, can you still get the 37% if you close another school building? That we don't have the answer. We won't have something set in stone, but I think what you're going to find is the schools are actively talking about how to try to solidify that as best as possible to understand which routes are open or not open to us.
Or do you
State
build-
doesn't like what if scenarios. It's the simple way of putting it, as we've talked about before. All right. Anything else tonight on this? So Kathy, this should be a living document. I think that we should evolve as the, I think as we talk about these things in future meetings, I think it's now a document that's been referenced in a public forum. If anyone has comments or suggestions to add, we should discuss it when we're discussing an agenda item. Like if recreation were here pitching a pool, right? Like we should find a way to at least weave it into document or turf fields or wherever any of these groups go. All right, I'm moving on to agenda item 9, Local Rapid Recovery Grant Program. So I included a link to this in the packet. Mark and I traded notes on this when it came out. This is very similar to the shared streets, which is also open again, that Karen had submitted a sidewalk proposal for down Newton Street previously, and I think got rejected, and then EDC submitted something for assisting our restaurants, which got accepted and funded. So Mark, before I open it to the committee, where are you in the town at given the deadline for next week, and what do you think are the items that may or may not be brought forward to the BOS for consideration, given that I think it's important to note we can only submit one item as a municipality?
Right. I'd need to go back and take a look. I believe that I had forwarded this to, I think Recreation and EDC and DPW again. I know that, I think Karen's a little frustrated. Hopefully third time's a charm. She had a great project the first time with, as you noted, Jason, those sidewalks. And even though the state felt that was a great project and everything, for some reason, it just didn't fit into what they wanted to do. And so whether that is something that is put in again, or whether it's something else at this point, remains to be seen. I believe that on Wednesday, there is an informational session on this grant. So hopefully that will, provide a little bit more clarity as to what we may be submitting for.
But the intent is absolutely to submit something.
Yes. Yeah. You gotta swing to hit the ball. So yeah.
Okay. And do you think you're going to present one option to the BOS or many options, or don't know yet?
I honestly don't know yet.
Okay. But this has to be an agenda topic for next week, right? To meet the deadline?
Well, it would, yes, it would have to be something that we'd have to bring forward for next week.
Okay. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
I'm sorry too, I just interrupted. So Mark, you're expecting to have more than one choice to present to the BOS, is that what you're saying?
Possibly, yeah.
And this is separate from Safe Streets.
Separate from the shared streets, correct.
It's Safe Streets.
It's very similar though, Kathy. As Jason said, they really, this is the third time that they've done something similar with this basically shared streets approach, just not calling it the same thing.
But isn't there a winter shared streets?
There
is.
That was the second piece, and now you've got this other program.
So are we going for both?
Yes, I think that we're putting, like I said, we're putting things in for every grant cycle just to have, have something in there for consideration.
So does Karen need any support or anyone else? Because it sounds like a lot of these are under DPW potentially, but like when is rec meeting? I mean, do people realize how quickly these deadlines, I mean, it's a week away, I think, just over a week until these things close.
Yeah, let me follow back up with Tim. Let me actually check my emails while you continue the conversation so I can check something, but.
I guess for any of the committee members that read the description, whether it's in our capital plan or not, did any of the items that we've discussed over the last 8 or so months come to mind as something that at least should be considered?
Facilities for outdoor activities. So, I mean, there's stuff on the turf fields or calendar or.
But these need to be like shovel ready type things, right, Mark? I don't even think Rec's done engineering around some of those.
No, and the one thing I'm just looking up that I had an email back from Tim, it was Community Connections grant for MPO, and that was and Tim was looking into bike racks and things like that for the basketball courts. So that's a completely different. That was a completely different grant.
At the last town meeting, didn't Rec get money for exploration on one of the fields that they asked for? I want to say it was the landfill field, but I'm not sure. There was one field that I think they did get some funding for.
Yeah, they were level.
Calander.
Well, they did
No, there was
calendar, and then I think the one by Neary, I think Joe was talking about. I think they were
Lundblad.
Yeah, they were smoothing it out or leveling it out or something because it had a mound or hump, or I'm not sure what the word was.
Well, I think they also got exploratory money for one. It'd be worth just asking them about, because if that money's sitting around, it could be deterred into, engineering of that project. If we're looking to get one shovel ready from them. I mean, we can't misappropriate it, but I think there's license under as I recall, I thought they got enough to explore, to draw up plans for one.
Could you use this kind of funding for like the Mooney lights and then not use the town funding?
I'm not sure about that. I think it was designated for the design of one field. So if it was there for the design of the one field, then that money could be used to get it as a shovel.
I think, Joe, Andrew, you're asking like this grant.
Yeah, like we have money set aside to do that, right? And it's sitting in an account because we approved it at town meeting. Could we use this funding for that and then basically return that money and close that warrant article?
It's a CPA article, just FYI, I'm pretty sure.
It is.
So yes, it'd still be returning it, but
Yeah.
for different.
So, I mean, that's shovel ready.
I think there was some, don't quote me on this because I don't have it up right now, but I think there was some prohibition about something that's already been
Approved.
budgeted or approved.
That would make sense. I'm just throwing out ideas.
So I guess the way I'll leave this conversation is obviously the BOS has to act by next Tuesday. So they got 8 days to at least figure out. But if anyone comes up with any ideas for exploration, I would just jot a note to Mark, at least so he can funnel it to the right department head. Don't email the committee, but just jot a note to Mark. And, I think Mark will put it in your capable hands of, at least funneling it to the right department head to weigh in on bringing forward the right priorities to the BOS.
One that I saw here that seemed like it wouldn't be too complicated was Wi-Fi networks in the town center. So maybe downtown Wi-Fi. I don't know if that would be that complicated.
Anyone else on this? It is a nice segue into the next one, shovel-ready projects. So I think these opportunities continue to reinforce the need to be ready. I think Karen would say she's ready to go on Newton Street. She just needs someone to accept her grant application. But, beyond Newton Street, I know there was an extensive letter in a recent BOS packet about Corderville Road. So it sounds like Karen is starting to move forward on getting that project shovel ready, although we obviously we're not bringing that forward at this town meeting, but it's nice to see that that's moving such that if some infrastructure type package comes along, she's ready to submit it if it meets the criteria. But I know there's probably an appetite amongst many members here, if not all, to continue to build out this list and whether we have to facilitate it or work directly with the department heads that would ultimately have to facilitate, or a board or commission. I guess, are there any other items, and we focused a lot on roadways, are there any other items that people really want to start to see get off the ground and be ready to go based on how these things are flowing out here these days?
The Finn parking lot and Trotter parking lot. Mainly because the school seems to think that they're going to have those done this coming year, yet it's not on our capital list. They think they've got enough money in their revolving fund to do one of them, but not both of them. But we don't have that on our capital list. So I would love to see, and those are easy, right? I'd love to see both of those get added to that list, because they should be able to be put together pretty quick, I would think.
Hey, Finn.
Jeff, just let me clarify on when Kathy refers to revolving fund, that's going to be funded by, because obviously the Northborough superintendent, i.e. the same superintendent in their team, sit in Southborough. We get rent every year from Northborough to use our space at Neary. So that's the money that they're planning to appropriate for at least one of those parking lots, i.e. doesn't go before town meeting. They'll just do it based on whatever bid they get. I think that's how they paid to do the Woodward enhancements in the parking lot when we were doing the public safety facility not too long ago as well. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
No, I just want to confirm. Did you say Finn and Trotter? Is that what you said? Okay, thank you.
Well, Neary needs it too, Jeff, but they're holding off on Neary because of what we're talking about with Neary. But Neary probably needs it worse than the three of them, but they've taken that one off for now. That one was on there. Right, Jason?
Yes, because I think they're being smart of waiting, letting finish this work that's going on right now to figure out what Neary's future looks like.
Jason, I'd like to see some of the, there was a sidewalk study done on adding sidewalks. I'd like to see more done as a shovel-ready project on some of those things as well. I think on some of these, I don't think there's a whole lot of, I don't know, design needed. I'd like to see more work done on those as well.
So when was that study?
Mr. Purple, do you know? I know it's been referenced a lot in the Board of Selectmen meetings, the Public Works Planning Board, if I'm not no, there was actually a committee.
Sidewalk committee was
Yeah.
created, what, 3 years ago? Maybe something, maybe less than that. It was
2015. Sam.
2015.
Yeah.
it was like a 6-week committee. And they essentially tried to prioritize where new sidewalks should be when funding became available.
Yeah, so I'd like to see us pick some of those off lists if possible too, through grants and whatnot.
How do we move that one forward if everyone agrees? That's obviously a Karen, that would fall under Karen's purview for engineering is my guess, and design. Do we take that and ask her what else she has? I know she has a bunch of repair items in the hopper on sidewalks, but like this particular grant that we just talked about in the last agenda topic specifically said you can't use it for repair. It's for new construction, which is I think why the Newton Road thing was so appealing, at least the first couple of cracks.
Yeah.
But let's get more on that list, right? Like I don't know what the
Karen was on that committee.
What, Andrew?
Karen was on the committee.
But if
So
we've
does-
got Portable Road, Newton sidewalks, the 2 school parking lots, and other sidewalks, if we could add those to the Newton sidewalk, then that's a pretty good list to be ready to go if Congress were to do an infrastructure package and say, guess what? Here you go.
Yeah.
I think Lisa's just saying like the Corderville already has sidewalks. Newton Street would be net new, but looking at the top 10 that they have, can we basically price that out so that
Do
they're
something.
shovel ready?
Yeah.
So who wants to go coordinate with Karen on this?
I guess I will next time I talk to her about a budget.
Perfect.
Yeah, so Andrew is the liaison for advisory. So yes, Andrew, this would be a lovely thing for you to blend in.
And Andrew, you could even probably, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Purple, Mr. Shea, Selectman Shea, you might want to follow up with Brian on this too. I'm sure, he
Ryan
does
and I
valuable-
have joint meetings with Karen, so.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you.
So Andrew, I would, because you are dealing a lot with rec as a liaison, I would just talk to Tim about this, right? Like clarify what Joe was saying about what design they've done or not done, et cetera, as well.
On just being shovel ready or on the,
Yeah, like are there any projects that they could
Rapid
quickly get shovel ready? I guess would be my personal question. I don't know if everyone agrees with that, but like are there projects that they have in their queue that given their backlog of all their capital that they've done the last couple of years that would be ready for prime time soon because they've done the design work, but they haven't done the funding?
should I?
The only thing that comes to mind to me is Calander. Like that's ready to go absent town meeting vote, but I don't know that fits in this definition of a current project.
Should I, in the context of this rapid recovery planning thing or just in general?
My view is both.
Okay.
But it sounds like Mark has cast a wide net on the recovery. Just a matter of then taking all the inputs and prioritizing for the BOS. Anything else on this? All right. Capital project oversight. So I added this mainly watching what's been going on related. I think someone said the Mooney Lights. Mainly what's been going on in that process. And I'm not here to take any sides of how that's all going, but it screams to me, that is an example, but there's pretty much every capital project this town has undertaken in the last, many years. A better process to streamline how we're spending consultant time, right? Like every individual board or committee goes out and hires their own engineers, their own consultants, et cetera. But I'm not sure in all instances that there's the right level of oversight from a board or a committee, or the expertise in most cases on those committees to make informed decisions. So, you go and hire a consultant, you assume that they will be able to take the process from point A to point B. Those of us in the consulting world know you still need help from the buyer of the services to get from point A to point B. And we're not going to resolve any of this in the short term, but I want to think about longer term is we do have an oversight provision. It's the last part of our charge, right? And presuming that survives in any sort of permanent bylaw of how we're going to oversee projects, I do want us to start to think about what this committee can do. And I realize none of us are engineers, for example, but looking at the public safety building, we had one architect and 8 other individuals with a wide variety of backgrounds, none of which were in the construction fields. But finding ways to better support boards and committees to properly execute on projects from start to finish is my goal with this. I don't have a magic plan or solution tonight, but I am going to keep this on the agenda and would ask for people to think about how we go about that while not trying to be strong-handed, but at the same time looking for ways to improve on clearly is kind of a siloed approach, which is what we've been trying to fix on the planning side, but you're also going to have to fix the siloed approach on the execution side in terms of, are you hiring the right consultants? If you are hiring the right consultants, how are you holding them accountable? How much are you paying them? Is there a standard that we in the town use as a benchmark for this type of consultant ranges from this to this? Are we getting ourselves fixed fees? Are we getting ourselves time and materials? Sort of thing. I mean, I don't know how every contract is working in town, and I haven't spent the time to figure it out, but I do think it is a way, given just the current 6 of us that are sitting here, for us to provide valuable input moving forward. So I don't have anything else tonight. I'm just looking for kind of a sanity check of, we are going to get to a point where we have a plan and we're going to have to execute, right? In being ready to execute, but also supporting those that already have approval to execute, I think just is incumbent upon us, because if we provide something to town meeting and we bring it forward and say it's the best interest of the town, but then we fall flat on the execution, then everyone forgets how good of an idea it was, and they focus on the execution. So I'm going to pause there. I will certainly open it up to feedback or ideas on path forward.
I mean,
I
Jason,
think it's laudable. I'm not sure what the answer is. We heard the night of that the Mooney Field was discussed, the lights, how upset some people are about how long this has taken. I mean, the guy who led the effort, I'm good friends with his wife. His kids are never going to use the field because it's taken so long. But and then remember the problems we had with the lights at Choke Field because of issues there that weren't done right. So I think this is laudable and a lot easier to talk about than actually pull off. So I think it'll take a lot of thinking to really figure out how to do it, but I think we definitely should try to.
So Jason, I'm thinking of it kind of as almost like a PMO / transformational SME team kind of thing. Process reengineering, things of that nature, more like internal consulting kind of thing. That makes sense?
I those are obviously the buzzwords in the project management world these days, but I would say there's a wealth of knowledge to help people, and I'm not sure they know that the wealth of knowledge is there to help them in some instances, and that's all this is looking to do, right? In terms of how do we help people advance things, but also check all the right boxes to make sure things are accurate along the way. Mark and I spent countless nights on the public safety building trying to get that through various boards and commissions, and you know, we would make so much progress and then there'd be a typo in the engineering plans. But we ultimately found a way to work through a process so that stuff like that didn't happen, and held them accountable with, candidly, our checkbook. And Kathy voted on many things that we had votes on the Public Safety Building Committee where we said, yeah, you could have done better. Thanks, but no thanks. Or, yeah, that was fair. That was our fault, right? And striking that right balance, I think, is going to be important moving forward. Go back to Kathy's document, look at what we may be embarking on. In any way, shape, or form, even one of those projects come to fruition, you know, that's a lot of effort that people are going to need some help with.
One fact that let me throw out, and I see Sam Stivers is listening to this. This is something he'd like to see, I think. We used to have a town engineer, and we don't anymore. No one on our payroll that's an engineer. He used to. So Karen, for example, will hire someone from outside to come in when we need to. But we used to actually have a town engineer. We don't anymore. So maybe that's something that should be reconsidered. But if we could find a way to, so for those that weren't on the Public Safety Building Committee, which is pretty much everybody, but Jason and I, Lisa, of course, was very involved in it. And I'm not saying this because I was on it. I just cannot tell you how much I wish we could replicate that process for everything that we do going forward. And it was all because of Jason. I mean, the way he led that committee, and Mark, and Brian, but it just really was a model to go forward with for future projects. So I do hope we can devise something where we really can oversee things, so that we really make sure that they're done timely. For example, last year, so we didn't vote for any field stuff as far as a town meeting in the summer. We postponed everything. But the Petrie field repairs, they've taken so long to do, the cost is well outside the warrant article amount. I'm not gonna be surprised if this comes back with the Mooney lights too, because it's been so long. So, you know, once they're approved, we need to get going and we need to have a process. So I do hope that as part of what we do, although it's a big thing to get done, that we really can come up with a process that gets followed for all major projects to implement them.
So, Mark, maybe an idea for you. I know you probably have enough on your department head agendas, but when you speak with your department heads, it doesn't have to be immediate, but I think that's a good place to start, like, and understand what sort of support or help they would want, especially though, I mean, you probably have 5 or 6 departments that oversee capital type projects, and just get like a barometer test of what they would welcome, what they think is an overreach. You know, I mean, obviously you have some living through it now, some that lived through it, and some that will live through it. But I think that's just helpful to us to figure out how we strike the balance, you know, moving forward. And I think, Kathy, we probably should find a way to memorialize what we did. Because I think it's all kind of up here and it's all in 4 years of meeting minutes, but we should probably find a way, like it'll be tweaked, but you know, everyone told us, you know, school's coming under budget. You guys are going to come back to town meeting for more money. That was what we were told countless times, even from supporters of the project. So I think we need to find a way to at least start there and go forward. Any other thoughts? All right. ClearGov. I am going to work with Brian to get everyone access. It's not perfect on the capital side, but I think very similar to what advisory's been doing is we've kind of just been taking an inventory and a log, and you know, Brian has a pretty good relationship with the developers on their side to give them feedback, and they do these little 6-week sprints, which is very common in the IT world, and they push out updates, which are real time, right, to a cloud-based type of software. So I just want people to start playing around, but I'm going to warn you, it's not perfect, and it may not be able to pull the data the way you want, but I think we need to at least make sure that everyone's looking at the right items that were at least preliminarily voted on by us in BOS absent financial considerations, so that we can start taking a look candidly to the following, next fiscal year and out 5 years as we look at what the town may be embarking down. Because again, I reference back to Kathy's document. Those aren't going to be small ticket projects. No matter which path we go down, you're looking at a sizable capital expenditure. It's just a matter of for what. So I guess the easiest way is I'll keep this on the agenda and we can certainly talk about it, pull it up next meeting. But I think if you have any like logistical items, just to avoid an open meeting law issue, just shoot Brian a note. We'll try to collect those and run through them in a meeting. And then to the extent the committee wants to push forward on certain things, we'll certainly get our rep on the phone and have her either fix it or do it. But I think it's nice to be kind of one of the earlier adopters of this module because we're kind of informing how it looks moving forward. Is the one benefit of this. Any questions on that? I'll warn Andrew and Kathy. It's nothing like what we've been dealing with on the operational budget. It's needs some work. Public comment. I'm seeing none. Other business, I'm just going to cover very briefly. So next week we are going to meet. I did get reply from most, if not all of you. Same time, same place. Jeff will Zoom in with us. He will have a document to read beforehand. It's probably 2 to 3 pages is what he has outlined. But I think obviously come with questions. Remember, I guess, and I'll reiterate this again next week. Remember, Jeff's scope was to look at how you would repurpose Neary or Woodward for municipal purposes. He will not be able to weigh in on any of the school, like would you build a new school or how would you repurpose a school, et cetera, just to lay the groundwork. Kathy and I will likely have an update on where the schools are at coming out of our Thursday night meeting on that particular topic, which we'll cover during that discussion as well, because it all is obviously so intertwined at this point. Any other business from any of the members? All right. Seeing none, I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call. Braccio?
Aye.
Cook?
Aye.
Hark?
Aye.
Palmer?
Aye.
Pfaff?
Aye.
And Malinowski.